very pleased tonight to bring together artists Amy Arbus and Alan Cumming. Hammer Conversations is an ongoing series which tries to bring together artists in different disciplines. And both Amy and Alan challenge their natural curiosity about human nature and their genuine empathy for people in their work. It comes through clearly in Amy's portrait work and in Alan's performances, and also in Alan's activism and humanitarian work as well. Eclectic Tony Award-winning actor Alan Cumming trained at the Royal Scottish Academy of Music and Drama. He's currently enjoying one of the most fruitful and creative periods in his very prolific professional career. He's starred in innumerable films and television series and legit theater plays in London and on Broadway. His awards include Tonys, Olivier's, Spirit Awards, British Comedy Awards, and on, you name it. What you might not know about Alan Cumming is his extensive activism and charity work for various civil rights and sex education causes, which have earned him several humanitarian awards, including the Human Rights Campaign Awards and GLAAD's Vito Russo Media Award. He's also the author of a book, Tommy's Tale, has recently launched a successful fragrance line called What Else? Cumming. He's currently devoting his time to campaigning for presidential candidate Barack Obama. Amy Arbus has published 4 books by Wellcome Books, including the award-winning On the Street and The Inconvenience of Being Born, and her most recent book, The Fourth Wall. Her photographs appear in magazines around the world, including The New Yorker, People, Dazed and Confused, and the New York Times Magazine. She teaches portraiture at the International Center of Photography in New York, the Anderson Ranch, and the Fine Arts Work Center, and her photographs are part of the collection at the New York Public Library and the Museum of Modern Art. And both Amy and Alan will be signing books in our bookstore upstairs after the talk. So please come and join us. Before I bring out Amy and Alan, I'd like to show some of Amy Arbus's work. The following is a montage of some of her photographs. The first set is from her book On the Street, which is photographs from 1980 to 1990. And the second set of photographs is from the new book, The Fourth Wall, which features actors from legit theater in costume, but out in the wilds of the city. So here we go.
Down on the street where the faces shine, floating around on a real old mine. See a pretty thing, ain't no wall. See a pretty thing, ain't no wall.
Hi, Amy.
Hi, Alan. Can you hear us? Great.
Good. So, Amy, uh, let's start our conversation.
I think Claudia wanted us to talk about what it was like to be on either side of the camera. The similarities between acting and photography and the differences.
Right. Shall I tell you what it's like being photographed by you?
Yeah.
It's really quite
Intimidating.
odd. Intimidating, no. Because the thing is that actually the picture that of me that's on the cover of the book is not really in this category so much. We should talk about that in a minute.
Yeah.
But no, but the other pictures inside are unusual in that you're an actor in a play, right, and you've got your costume on, but you're sort of taken from the safety of the theatre and taken out into the world somewhere and plonked down, and it's kind of I find it really quite. I feel like I've done something bad because you're not, when you're in a play, you're not allowed to leave the theatre with your costume on, or so I feel like I'm going to get into trouble first of all. And then one of the times I did it I actually had to walk along the street, and so the people who'd just seen the play were walking out too, and that was a really weird experience. I'm sort of dressed. That was when I was in a Chekhov play, and but what's really interesting about it is that you are out of your out of the kind of environment that you're used to when you're playing the parts, but you're actually, so in a way you have to find more of the true essence of the character, and Amy kind of tells you things or she mentions lines from the play, like she quotes lines of the play that she's written down when she's seen the play, and says she think about this moment and blah blah blah, and it's a really weird experience because I was talking about it today that usually when you're in a play you don't see. You only see certain images of the play. It's not like a movie where you can watch it the same way as everyone else. So you tend to see quite sensationalized images of the play. The one that's on the poster, or the when you're going like that or something. Big kind of dramatic moments. And so when, like especially the last photo I did with her from this play, The Back Eye, that I did, it was really interesting because I looked at the picture and was like, oh, I didn't really recognize the character because all the other they've all been sort of sexy, big dramatic things, and I think that's really what's really amazing is that you find a bit about the character that maybe you didn't, that's there, but you didn't really see it as for yourself because you're only being given certain, you don't know other people's perception of the character, and you begin to see it a little bit in the photos, which I find really great because. I don't like the fact that you go away from a play only remembering what other people have shown you from the outside.
Other actors have said that, like.
Oh, okay.
No, to me, about. I mean, some of it is very awkward for them because I'm studying the way that they do their part, and I'm also picking things out of context. So it's a little challenging. I thought during the process of the project, I thought, well, maybe I should really learn what this is like. And I took an acting class, and I was completely overwhelmed and thought, oh, it's impossible to do that, to be taken to a scene and redo that.
Especially out of the environment of the theatre. That's I think the thing I find most. The thing I like most about it, and the thing I find most unsettling about it, is this that you're kind of, and in a way, the thing of being photographed, actors are often photographed as themselves, or for a sort of fashion thing or something. So that thing of focusing on the photographer and having that relationship down the lens, but doing that as a character, you don't really get. Maybe you do it in stills from a movie, but not really in when you're a character in a play, and that's really interesting too.
Well, the last time I was trying to set up the Bacchae shoot, and your assistant said to me, he's not going outside in a gold dress. Forget it.
I was wearing a gold kilt and a gold vest, and I had like big, huge hair and glitter and makeup and no shoes. So I was like, can we do it like backstage somewhere? Yeah, I wasn't going to walk out onto Columbus Circle like that. I love you, but I don't love you that much. But why? I want to know why. I mean, how this project started, and also like your dad's an actor, and your mum was a photographer. So in a way, this is sort of a fusion of your whole family trades, isn't it?
Yeah,
Bringing this
it's sort
book
of, yeah, it's like the perfect marriage, which, sometimes it's so obvious you can't even figure it out. So it took me quite a long time to become a photographer and way much longer to fall in love with the theater. And once I did, having this other agenda made watching the plays so completely fascinating. I couldn't go often enough. If I loved a play, I could see it 5 times
Yeah.
at least.
Yeah.
Because it would change and the performances would change. And I would also be, taking lines down and falling in love with stuff that I frankly knew I would never capture on film because some of it just doesn't translate. It's only working in that venue. So when the actors are outside of the play, they're also somehow becoming themselves and fighting the urge to become themselves.
Yeah, yeah. And also fighting the urge to just do the thing that you've seen on the image of the
Yeah,
play. I think
yeah.
that's what I think is really interesting about it. So in a funny sort of way, the last two were quite sad. I thought the pictures
Yeah.
I did with you, and I was really, and in a way I realised that of course there's a sadness to every character, but there was like the Dionysus one, where I am playing this god and he's all got big hair and lots of makeup and all gold and sparkly. Actually, he looks like a little boy. And actually, I realised that of course in the story of the play he is a god, but he's just all he wants is to be accepted by his family. So it was this really illuminating moment for me. Sadly, we did it on the last day of the play. But I knew that already. And in the seagull one, I thought he was quite. There was a sort of sadness to that picture that, because everyone in that place sort of, I think he's sort of, everyone's a bit desperate, and yet the pictures of you are always like ha ha, we're lovers in a Chekhov play. It's great. And what about when you did the other book, the ones on the street? That's in a funny way. They're not actors, but they're all performing for you, and some of them probably better than some of the actors in your other book.
That's sweet. Well, it was the 80s, and they were, many of them, performance artists or clothing designers or musicians, but performers for sure. And also inventing forms of performance, art, really. So I would stop them and only had a couple minutes with them.
But you didn't say, oh, I want to take your photograph on Tuesday and I want to do this sort of thing. It was mostly just you were on the street and you met them and you did them right there and then.
Initially, I did it for 10 years. Every 6 weeks, the page on the street was published. But yeah, it started out all happenstance. I would just run into them, and including Madonna.
Yeah.
That happened to be 1983, the very week that the Village Voice was running a review of her first record. So I remember she still used her last name. And she told me that she was still wearing her pajamas. And, I heard stories about her performing that, and that she was sleeping on the floor of her recording studio. She was so broke, and shopping at the thrift store. But meanwhile, looking more fabulous than ever, or just as fabulous as ever.
Yeah. Look at her now.
I know.
And did you say there's going to be a film about that book?
Yeah, so a friend of mine, John Spellis, started doing videos of photographers, for photographers, but for everyone to see the very thing we're talking about now, the process of what it's like doing it, and sort of deconstructing that. So you talk about your philosophy of photographing and so on, and then there's a little 20-minute bonus feature, and I was working on the Street was coming out in the fall of '06, and he said, we'll do your little 20-minute bonus feature on the street. Where are they now? And we started looking for these people, and we found 15 of them, and the interviews were so incredibly amazing. I have to admit, the photographs were not so great, but
Photographed them again.
I
well as-
re-photographed them. But the interviews, mostly everybody looked exactly the same. They didn't dress as well, And one woman was completely unrecognizable and had completely changed her life and her career and everything about her. So, but anyway, what has come out of this is a 70-minute documentary really about what New York was like then and what a creative time it was. And what's happening to it now, which is that it's getting amazingly gentrified and hard for young kids who don't have money to live there and just do their work and have the sense that they could succeed at whatever they wanted to do. So it's this completely heart-wrenching but very moving story through these people.
And when can we see it?
Well, hopefully we just entered it into Sundance, so hopefully
That'd be good.
that's January. So hopefully we'll see.
Talking of kids doing what they want to do and stuff, I'm intrigued about what it's like to do a job that your mum does or did, and what that must be like. You know, I always sort of, when I know actors whose parents are actors, and I think it must be quite hard to do the same job as when they're well known and everything like that. What was that like? I mean, what is that like? And
Well, both of my parents were photographers, and it honestly never occurred to me to be one. Except, like you said to me this afternoon, I tried everything else I could think of in the arts, music mostly, and all kinds of art. I couldn't draw, but I could do almost anything else. But when I finally, everyone knew I was a photographer before I was, because I spoke of, I would tell every story in visual terms. And the minute I picked up a camera, because a friend encouraged me to, I had this sense, I'm home. You know, this is something it's natural for me to be doing this.
but were you reticent to do that, do you think, because of the sort of...
Yeah.
Yeah.
So my mom had passed away, and my dad had become an actor. So there was this, for me, it was almost like I was going to say a void, but it was almost like a vacuum of where is the photography in my life? You know, it's like, for me, we made the jokes about being validated today, the parking validation.
We're not from LA, and so the thing of where you go and you just walk in and someone goes, do you need to be validated? I was going, yes, more than most people. As often as you can. Anyway.
I lost my train of thought.
What was it again? About being validated and about your parents.
Oh,
yeah, about the void, when the void in your life, and
Yeah.
where was the photography, and
it was almost like a diary, literally. Like, if there weren't photographs of it, you know, I couldn't quite, it was my way of remembering things. So if there were no photographs of it, it was hard for me to reconstruct it in my memories. So it was very disconcerting. And also, I think I started photographing, probably in retrospect, to feel closer to both of my parents. You know, it's a real connection.
I think it's really interesting, that thing about not being able to... I mean, it's not the same thing, but you talking about how if you hadn't photographed it, it sort of in a way hadn't happened.
Yeah.
And I did this play a couple of years ago, this Jenny play, and it was this sort of existential thing about a photographer coming to take a picture of the Pope. And it was like the Pope didn't really exist until he was photographed. And because nobody saw his back, they didn't bother to do him. And so his back, like, so Vivienne Westwood designed the costumes, and there was this, I was the Pope, and there was this big fabulous thing, but when he eventually spun round, my bum was sticking out the back, because they didn't bother to do him, because why bother, because nobody would ever see that. And it was just this really interesting thing about...
It's the second time your bum has been shown.
Oh, it's more than that, you know. This part is contractual now. But anyway, blushing. But the whole thing about you know, in a way, sort of like being validated. You only, it doesn't really, you don't really exist until there's an image of you doing it. And I thought it was a really interesting link with our kind of modern celebrity-obsessed culture. Like, you know, people say, "Oh, you were at the so-and-so party. I didn't. I saw the article in InStyle. I didn't see a picture." And you go, well, I was there, but just maybe didn't use my picture. And in some way that you weren't actually there until it's reported in the press. And then it's like, people dump their boyfriends or girlfriends via their publicist, like, so that because they can't, and that thing when people have problems, famous people, they kind of have to rush onto Oprah to talk about it because they haven't really had the problem until they've talked about it on TV. I think that's really fascinating. So, shall we talk about the cover of the book? Because we didn't talk about that. So the cover of the book was taken on the. This is when I did Cabaret on Broadway, and they said to me, it's the opening night, and they said, and I was really. Well, basically, Amy didn't know this until today. I told her, I didn't want you to be there that night. I really didn't want you to take that picture because it was the opening night and I was so freaked out.
Well, guess what? I didn't want to be there either. I was so freaked out.
Yeah, and it was just a scary. I was just, I was new to New York. And everyone's going, this is going to be a huge thing for you. It's massive. And I was all nervous, and I used to get really stressed out. And all these famous people would come to. Want to see you afterwards, and I remember I would go into the shower and cry. I'd be all like, "Oh, boo-hoo," and I couldn't. I was all stressed out, and I couldn't. And then I remember one time Whoopi Goldberg literally waiting outside the shower door for me to come out, and I was like, "This is insane." And I was like, "I don't want to go and meet her," and so I was in a really stressed out place. And then it's any opening night is kind of stressful, as any actor will tell you. And then and I just was, and all my friends were coming from Britain, and I'd been on my own all this time, and I was really kind of very fractious, and I'd done so much press, and I was just so looking forward to it being over, and the press lady said, "Oh, this Amy Arbus wants to come and take your picture for the New Yorker," which in any other circumstance, any actor would be like, "Wow, yeah, that'd be great," and but I was like, "No, I don't want to," And I just said, can't you come in the afternoon? And they said, no, they want the kind of just walked off stage kind of vibe. And as you can, in the picture, I can do that and touch my walls. I could touch the walls of that dressing room. And I just thought, and I just was so kind of vulnerable, really. And I didn't really want to have a stranger in that moment just after. I think it's, again, like the thing about feeling bad if you walk outside the theatre with your costume on. It's sort of, you're not allowed to have like people backstage after the after the half-hour call before a play, and like people sort of have to be announced to come up after the thing. So it was all these kind of boundaries were being
breaking the rules.
Yeah. And I felt very, and then so I came into the thing, and there's Amy, and she was obviously all there, and there was a tiny room, and she goes, I don't have much equipment, it's going to be fine, don't worry. And then all these people started coming in, and I was just, it was just this kind of very anxious kind of moment. But she was lovely, and of course,
P.S. I thanked him years. We never spoke. We didn't. That was it. Our meeting was like 2.5 minutes. I got 6 frames or something, and when we finally met again, I said, you were so incredibly generous with me that night. It's true.
Bless you.
It's
Inside
true.
I was seething. But I just thought also, it's one of these things where, also I thought, this poor lady's come to do this thing, and people started arriving. I thought, she's not going to be able to see me because everyone's going to be pushing her off her little place. And so, so then that picture happened, and then sort of now, in retrospect, I'm just so happy that I did that, because it's captured a moment in my life that was really quite an extraordinary moment, and the idea that I wouldn't have had that image to remember it by, again, probably it wouldn't have happened had I not. It would have been I would have remembered it in a very different way. And at that moment, I'm like sort of doing a bit of like, I'm a cheeky party boy, but I was also like, I just want to swallow this entire bottle of wine. And there's a hand coming in with a glass that's my old agent's and things, and so it just really captured a moment in time. But it's funny that something should have come from I was like, no, I don't want to, and yeah, 10 years later I'm like, oh, I'm so glad I did that. It's a lesson to be learned.
Exactly. So the project didn't start for years later. It actually started out here because my dad and my stepmom are part of the Interact Theater Group, and they were doing a production of Guys and Dolls. And I was sort of onto something, but these ideas don't come to me like completely intellectually. They're more instinctual, and I didn't really know what I was wanting to do. But I asked to photograph the actors because I had seen the show and the costumes were gorgeous. And I said, could I just work during a matinee? And the theater was set up so that the actors were making all of their costume changes in a little trailer out back, and they had to come out of the trailer to get into the theater. So it was a perfect setup for me to take a couple frames of them by the side of the building there. So and I looked at the pictures and I was like, wow, these aren't like production stills, and they're not like 8x10 glossies. They all of a sudden are like fictional characters come to life, and they have this weird time travel. We don't know where we are. We don't know what year it is, and it's kind of mystical and interesting.
It's also sort of people preparing to do something. I think that's really, I like photos that, backstage, or like when, like some of these pictures of Obama right now, I'm really fascinated by, like when he's about to go on and you see kind of a bottle of water he's always just had, and little notes and things like that. And I love that kind of idea of the behind the curtain, behind like the Wizard of Oz thing. Talking of Obama, well, Amy wanted to. I'm doing these things for the campaign, but I'm actually not allowed to be. I've been sort of fired, I suppose. I'm not allowed to be an official surrogate anymore because my citizenship wouldn't have come through in time, and so the FEC. It's quite strict. You're not allowed to. I can still do things and I can still go to things, but I can't be an official surrogate, which is kind of such a bizarre.
That's another
bizarre
word.
Isn't that bizarre? I'm banned from being a surrogate. But that event that there's an event I was going to introduce him at in New York. Still not. And Amy wanted to come. And I thought that would be I think political rallies are. Well, I was just in Denver for the Democratic thing, and it was such a theatrical occasion. I mean, those things are designed to kind of get you going. I mean, I waved an American flag quite without irony, and so that was pretty potent. And I think it would be really great to do this sort of thing in a political sort of environment.
Yeah, there was a gorgeous picture. I don't know if you guys saw it on the cover of the Times like in the last few weeks.
In New York or the New York Times?
Yeah.
Got to see New York because we're in LA.
Sorry, New York Times. But from the point of view of the stage, really, and the American flag like this, and Obama through that, and it was so moving. And I was like, well, there's the shot.
Yeah. Fingers crossed. Any Obama supporters in the audience, by any chance? Any McCain supporters? Interesting. I bet if you are, you're keeping quiet. See, that's the thing. That's a telling thing about Republicans. They kind of don't want to say it out loud. What else? Should we take questions now?
Yeah,
or shall we? Does anyone want to ask us a
absolutely.
question? We could ramble on. Any questions? Oh, there's one over there. Hello.
Thank you.
Do you want me to?
The mic will be coming if you want to repeat that. Where was the question?
I was going to repeat the question, but I
Go
think you
ahead.
can do it better.
The question was whether Amy sees a relationship between her work and her mother's work.
Ironically, when people do, by the way, I'm thrilled. I actually see the differences because of course, I'm attracted to the same subject matter. And when I finally broke down and decided to follow in the footsteps of, I thought, well, first of all, I had no intention of, I didn't take myself seriously as an artist. I just thought, I want to have an interesting life. I want to have adventures. I want to have an excuse to meet people and go to their house. I just thought, this is a fun life. And, I didn't realize how hard it was to make a living, and I didn't think of myself, honestly, as an artist. And I thought that was sort of being a dilettante to want to be an artist. So along the way, I saw a lot of people whose work was incredibly much more like hers, or derivative of hers, than mine. I think there's an extraordinary amount of differences. I mean, of course, there's, I hope, some genetic stuff in there, but ironically, the feeling of the photographs is quite different.
Do you? I was interested. Do you know a lot of other photographers?
Mm.
Do you?
Tons.
And do you all get together and like have little photographer parties?
Not really. Do you have actor parties?
We have actor parties, yeah.
Okay.
But like I was thinking, like directors, I just think I'm always intrigued by how like there's this thing that actors are really bitchy about other actors, and I actually think that directors are the most bitchy about other directors. It's very hard for a director to say, "Wow, that was an amazing piece of work." Perhaps because they've got to be so analytical and dissect everything to the nth degree, they can't actually just. I think they're the least good at just having an emotional experience. So I wondered what it's like I wonder if our photographers are very supportive of each other.
Well, in the environment that I'm in, we are, because I'm teaching at International Center of Photography, which is it's a really amazing, it's a magical place. It really is quite international. And all of the staff is actually photographers. And part of the experience of being there is that there are lecture series where people come and talk about their process. And then we have our own individual lecture series where they actually come to the classroom and talk about their process. So it's tremendously supportive. And but there's not enough of a community for professionals. I mean, we meet in educational situations, but we don't really have organizations that support us so much.
Yeah.
So
I remember, Todd Eberly.
sure.
He's a photographer, and I can't remember where we were, and there was like someone else, kind of a famous photographer, at this party, and he was all like, "Oh my God, will you introduce me?" And I thought, how weird is that there's not that, because also when if you're sort of well known as an actor, you kind of assume that another well known actor will know who you are, so you kind of do that kind of. How are you? You don't have to think that you don't have to worry about. It's actually quite. You feel comforted because you have a kind of and it's going to be a sort of comfort zone there, rather than being, "Oh, I'd love to meet them. I wonder if they'll what would they think of me." Even though they hate you, there would be there's a sort of an understanding. I call it the Groucho Club nod. The Groucho Club's this place in London where it's like one of those clubs that you like a kind of a gentleman's club, but it's modern, and famous people go there, and it's like you see someone there and you just go, and you don't know them, but it's like, "Oh, hi, you're famous, I'm famous, hi." And so walls are broken down. But I thought that was really sweet, and also a bit sad that Todd, there's not that thing when photographers would necessarily know who that person is if you're not kind of friends. You know what I mean? Because you don't see them and you don't kind of their work, but you don't necessarily know their face.
Well, I'm in trouble now because I thought, oh, it's great to succeed or have your work out there or have your name out there, but now people know what I look like, and I think that's a problem. Because I think part of what is fun about it is not being this celebrity. I really don't want to be this celebrity. I mean, I'm thrilled that my books are a success, but somehow it tips the scale in an awkward way.
Well, so the thing I really hate about being well known is the level of self-consciousness that you live with all the time, and an inability to. What I used to love was being an observer, to be able to go somewhere and just watch people. And now I can still do that, of course, but I have to know that when I'm watching people, people are watching me watching people.
Of course.
And it's not quite the same. Anyone else got a question? Oh, yes.
Wait for the microphone, please.
Oh.
Can you wait for the microphone, please?
Careful. Wait for the microphone. Crikey.
You jumped your
Bossy
cue.
boots there.
So sorry. Amazing work. Thank you both. I was curious about Nan Golden's work in the 80s. Was there an overlap? Did you see Ballad of Sexual Dependency and the 10 Years After.
Oh, yeah.
I was kind of curious when you're talking about your work, how you got to interview some of your subjects 10 years or 20 years after.
Yeah.
If there was any thoughts or inspirations or...
Well, ironically, Nan was the year ahead of me at Museum of Fine Art in Boston at school. So she actually graduated, and I left because for a job assisting a fashion photographer in New York. So I was quite aware of her work, and she had a retrospective at the Whitney at, the tender age of who knows what, but which was extraordinary. And the work is so powerful, and what she did with color was such a huge contribution to the medium. I mean, it's so raw and rough and brash, and but I kept looking at the pictures and thinking, I wouldn't want to live through that life in order to get those images. She really, she has a rough road. But the work is extraordinary. It was certainly groundbreaking. Yeah.
Hello, you up there?
Oh.
I wasn't was it me or was
It wasn't you, but why don't you just say it? Yeah.
I was curious. You said that you went back and you found people. How did you do that? What was the process? I mean, rediscovering.
Well, it's gotten really sort of creepy. It's creepy how easy it is to find people that you haven't been in touch with for a long time. I did not rely on all those like info.com and stuff, or Anywho is another one. Anywho. You go to anywho.com and you type in somebody's name, and all of a sudden you've got their name, address, social, and phone number. It's really scary.
I always think those things that at least if it costs something, it's going to stop people doing it.
Oh my God. Anyway, actually, I found most people through Suzanne Barsh, who at the time had her own store and brought Vivienne Westwood and many other incredible clothes to Soho, had her own shop, and started giving parties. And she knew all those people. A lot of the kids that were only 19 that I was photographing would go clubbing and hang out at Suzanne's house so that they didn't have to go home to Queens, to their parents' house. So she knows everybody. So she was an enormous help. And then a few people I've stayed in touch with, and then just knowing people through other people. But yeah, that's my first book, No Place Like Home, was really as much about the trophy or the photograph. It was about the adventure of finding things. And that was, we got sort of obsessed with, where is that person? So it was fun.
I wanted to know, Amy, what your relationship and opinion of Bill Cunningham's work is.
Bill Cunningham takes the pictures for the New York Times on the street, but they're candids. And I once called him. Ironically, we both worked. He used to live in Carnegie Hall, and everybody.
Carnegie Hall. You can live in Carnegie Hall.
Well, not anymore. You can't. Yeah, we all just got kicked out. But I
mean, there's apartments in Carnegie Hall. Ah, right. I thought you meant like
Studios.
Madonna in our studio. Oh, I see.
Originally studios, but live work was okay for so many years, and all of a sudden they lost a battle with a city who's going to gut it and make condos out of it, which is appalling because my friend's darkroom that I used was there, and all of the people were older than us and had been living there for 30, 40, 50 years, and what are they going to do now? It's really heartbreaking.
That lovely Mayor Giuliani had anything to do with it?
Post, but it's the way that New York is going. It's a really sad. I mean, they fought this thing. Anyway, where was I going with this?
Bill Cunningham.
Oh, so Bill, I called him once, and first the New York Times stole the title on the street. And I said to the Village Voice, "Are you going to let them steal the title?" And they were like, "Yeah, whatever." So it's like at our hotel. Whatever, whenever.
Yeah, the W. Whenever, whatever, whatever. That's when you pick out the one and go, hello, Mr. Cumming, whenever, whatever, whatever. Like that.
They're trying to say, "We'll give you anything you want, whatever time you want it."
I'd
But-
also go, whatever.
Yeah, exactly. Bill didn't see himself as an artist or a photographer, or he didn't take himself seriously, and I think now finally he does, and he should. I mean, he's really made this fabulous document, but it's quite.
Didn't you just have an exhibition about something about to do with bikes?
I don't know about the bikes.
Or something to do, not like people on bikes, but maybe, I can't remember, maybe it was for, what? Jesus bikes,
Okay, we're going down the rabbit hole.
for that one. But you just had this exhibition in New York I was invited to. It looked great.
Yeah, he's a character, but totally different, I would say. Very different stylistically and conceptually, and I really engage people, and if they don't want to do it, they don't want to do it.
He kind of creeps around. It's really, I love watching him when he comes to photograph. He kind of just goes, and goes away. He never really speaks, and he kind of just, he doesn't scream your name or anything. He just kind of, he's like a funny old man, which I suppose he is.
He's very sweet,
Very
but yeah,
sweet.
it's very different. I love to have him come to my events and photograph him and watch him. It is really, he's very much the fly on the wall. And I can't do that anymore.
Next question. Yes, you, madam or miss. Right there. I know you're looking behind. Oh, yeah, you get the microphone. That's very good.
From all sides.
Amy, I was wondering if you have remained to shoot exclusively film or if you've crept into the digital world.
Yes. I just, when, this is probably a similar experience to one that you might have. When a book is published, there's this awful post-project depression. And I felt it coming because the book came out in April, and I thought, I need something to keep me occupied through this hard. I'm not stopping. I want to continue the theater photographs to do book 2 or whatever. I just love doing it so much. But there's a certain finality to a book coming out into the world, and to stave off that feeling of, oh my God, what am I doing next? I threw myself into digital, and it is very consuming, and it is completely opposite. No other art form has had such a profound transition. To me, it's like being a filmmaker and being asked to do video. It's like, oh, I gotta, reassess the whole. I mean, it's not just pixels instead of grain. It's really, really different. There's things that you can do. I had to do it. I mean, it's like a big secret, you guys, that I do it because I still want to shoot film. Don't tell anybody I know how to use digital. But anyway, my students do it, and they are able to do stuff. They're able to make photographs that I'm not able to make, and I find that fascinating. And the reverse is true. So they are quite different. And of course, everyone shoots digital in color, even if they're thinking conceptually in black and white. So there's that other layer. But there's a lot of. I remember when I first graduated to the Square, it took me 2 years to learn how to use the Hasselblad, which is the camera I use.
What does graduate to the square mean?
Well, it's the shape that I photograph with, and I use the camera.
What do you mean? But you got to you do square pictures.
Well, when you start photographing, you use 35 millimeter, which is the shape,
Like that.
not quite like a film, but
Or oblong.
Yeah, well, I used it as a vertical in the on the street mostly.
Right.
And then I realized when I did a book on infants, the format, the aspect ratio was too long. And then I kept wanting to get it more square. And eventually when I started using a square format, it was my whole style changed. The pictures were much more forceful.
All your pictures are square.
Well,
I mean, like, are they?
no, because and now I'm shooting digital.
Oh, I see.
Well, these all are square.
Gosh, I didn't really notice that. I was so fascinated by what was going on, I didn't think of the shapes.
But no, what? Oh, I want to tell them what happened when this is very digital oriented. The second to last time we worked together was Seagull, and we were in an alley, and I was photographing him, and Alan had just been photographed a million times with digital, and he said, "Oh, it's so nice to work with somebody who uses film, because now what people do is they go click
Yeah.
and look at the monitor."
So that you're used to. It used to be that there'd be the photographer and all the assistants and things would be around there, and you'd be giving it all this, and they would go like, ooh, 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 very good. And now there's a crowd of people over here by a computer, and the photographer's going. So you feel like you're in this funny little like vacuum, like you're kind of acting on your own, and you don't. It's sort of, and also there's a delay, so you might be onto your next pose, and you get a little reaction to the one before. It's weird.
It's very weird. So they're all tethered to their computers. And
Yeah.
and
But it must be
they're
quite good to see, like, not even with the computer thing, but you can actually look at something immediately and see what you've just shot. That must be quite exciting, isn't it?
It's very exciting. It's very seductive. But we used to have and I bought out all the Polaroid that I could. I love this Polaroid. It's the most glorious film, and they've completely stopped making it. But
At all. All Polaroids.
this kind,
What, the
positive,
one-
negative.
You do a test one at the start of
Ed
the shot.
Harris, the reason his pants are slightly solarized is because it was a Polaroid that I pulled too early and it got exposed to light, and it's sort of making the change from positive to negative, and it's pretty exciting. And that film had this wonderful flaw, and that film is not being made anymore.
I love that. Like, it used to be the thing when you do a photo shoot that you'd get one of the Polaroids to take home at the end of the day, just to kind of have a little record of it. And sometimes and then used to have to sometimes paint them with that funny stuff, otherwise it would fade away.
Yeah.
And I love the kind of the lack of, or the sort of mortality of them. Not the
Yeah.
lack of, but the mortality of them. And you can't get that anymore. It's kind of weird. You go home and you've got no sort of memory of it. Again, this thing about.
Well,
memory.
they can email it too.
They can email it to you a couple of days later. Yeah, immediately, actually, yeah. But that's the thing now, they email you millions.
Yeah.
And I like the fact it's just one.
They also, the one of the really disconcerting things for me about digital is that everybody keeps everything. And what is one of the most challenging things in photography is how to edit. And so I don't like all of those bad pictures around, and I'm desperate to delete. And they tell you not to for many reasons I won't bore you with. Well, if you delete off the card, which I like to do, supposedly it leaves information on the card and it corrupts your card.
Ooh, no.
And you have to format your card each time, which is supposedly wiping the slate completely clean, but I don't think that works either, frankly. And I don't, the card is the least valuable thing, And by the way, the cameras are not very valuable. I bought my camera, and 8 weeks later, there was a new model. Better, bigger, more pixels, lower light. You can shoot it. I mean, it's crazy. It's crazy.
Yes, sir.
This one's
That's okay. It's pretty random. It's, there's a variety of reasons. It's usually something just kind of a gut thing that I connect with. And I was thinking about it. We're talking today about one of the good things about being constantly interviewed is that it's like sort of therapy. It's, that you have to actually talk, think about things that you maybe would never have really wanted to think about. And I think I am quite drawn to roles that are, I don't really play normal people very often. And sometimes I do, but I'm more excited by heightened things and sort of fairy tales, not necessarily fairy tales in the kind of Grimm's fairy tales, but stories that are more kind of like a heightened version of reality. So that's partly one of them, and then it's also a kind of thing if I like, for example, with the Seagull, I just really wanted to do something kind of different. I'd never done a Chekhov play. I really wanted to do something that was kind of not like that I just talked about. And then, then I was going on to, because I knew I was going on to play Dionysus in this big kind of extravaganza thing. So I like to kind of keep myself fresh. I think it's really important to, with all the different kind of things I do, I think it means that when you come to a new thing or a different thing, you have a freshness and you bring, and I always say this thing that when I used to do stand-up comedy with another boy, and it was actually more sort of sit-down comedy, actually. But when I came to do Shakespeare plays, when I played Hamlet and stuff, I think doing the soliloquies from Shakespeare I understood how to do them because I'd done stand-up comedy. I had no kind of fear about looking out to an audience and just speaking into people's eyes, which a lot of actors have a problem with because it's not really a thing you do and so each that doing kind of funny little stand-up comedy things in little theatres and around Britain kind of helped me be a Shakespearean actor. And so I think it's really good to do a lot of different things for me because I kind of find other things out about them. But it's pretty random. And also then it can be like, oh, I've got to earn some money. Oh, I've got to, I'd like to not be at home for a while. Oh, I'd like to be at home for a while. Stuff like that. Oh, I'm getting divorced again. Something like that, Yes, young lady.
This one's for you as well. Oh, sorry. Out of all of the roles you've played on the stage, is there one that stands out as having a certain memorable impact on your life, and why?
Well, they all do. That thing in Cabaret has got a huge thing because of just. But I suppose when I played Hamlet, coming back to that again, that was just a huge thing because it was kind of devastating on my life. Yeah, I mean it was hard. It was a very it's kind of almost a cliche to say that, but it was a really, really intense experience for me, and it sort of filtered into my life, into my real life, in quite a bad way. And so I'm very, I'm very cautious now about that. When I actually did before. A couple of years ago, I did Bent, that play Bent in London, and it's about gay people in the concentration camps. So it's pretty intense, and it's very intense. And I think I'm older and wiser now. And I was going away to London, and I was very aware that what had happened in the past, and I was going to be doing this thing of being in a place every night that you couldn't possibly avoid being incredibly traumatized by it. I defy anyone to play that part and to be in those situations and not to, it really, it's like the worst experience any human being could pretend to inhabit. So I was very I made sure that I was very protected, and I kind of took all my man and my dogs and everything. I made my life very sheltered so that I wouldn't get that bad thing wouldn't happen again. And then what was funny was that people would come into the dressing room afterwards, and it's very, very distressing. I think I wouldn't want to see it if I would never go and see it. I think it was a horrible experience for an audience too. But that's a great thing about theatre. It's not always that. And so people would come backstage and they'd be really, really devastated and be like, how do you do this every night? And I go, by not talking about it afterwards. And they go, but how do you go? And I'm like, by not talking about it afterwards. And so it was I think it was a really, you learn how to deal with, you get better at learning how to deal with certain things. And I was fine when I did that one. But it's pretty, I think you've got to be careful about things like that. And with Hamlet, I was younger and didn't. So that Hamlet would be the one that had the most effect on my life. Yes,
he also
hello.
does a lot of things at one time.
I multitask.
Yeah.
I'm not really here right now.
Hi, good evening. Amy, you mentioned it was a long time before you became a photographer. Do you mean by that it was a long time before you felt like you'd arrived, or had you held many other careers prior to that? And if so, for how long?
I became a photographer in 1980, which was, in my late 20s or something. I seriously pursued music, but I was around all these incredible child prodigies. Actually, the band The Cars, if you remember them. And so I was completely intimidated by their, by their expertise and how little, I would go to Berklee College of Music in Boston and study for hours and do my scales and modes, and they would jam. And they would play out, and they would be great. So I struggled with that for a long time. So it took me till I was 27, 28 to really know what I wanted to do and to pursue it. I just went to Museum of Fine Art for 1 year and then got a job assisting another photographer in New York. And then I went on my own and got the job at the Village Voice, actually, when I left working for Jean Paul Yusso. So the Voice was my first gig, and it was actually a very lucky thing because I was known, in the downtown crowd. People would wait for me to come along. Like, where have you been all my life, kind of thing,
That's nice, because I was just thinking there's some photographers in New York that, I'm like, oh my God, they're here, quick, we're going. Yeah.
Then it was a real honor to be photographed, and now it's like, that again. So, when you said I'm a photographer in the 80s, it was like, cool. And now it's like, okay, who isn't?
Yeah.
So it's very different.
Yes, sir, with the specs.
Hi, Amy. This is for you. How important was it in your early career for art directors to spot your talent?
I did have an incredible art director early on named Yolanda Cuomo, who's actually worked very closely with my sister on my mom's work since then. But she was at Self magazine and a couple of other magazines, and she was very helpful to me because there was that thing of, well, you're not as good as your mother. And she helped me navigate that for a while because she would give me direction. Like when I did a story on a nudist camp in Florida, she said, we want it to look like snapshots, like anybody's vacation photos. So, you can make them sophisticated, but they've got to look like snapshots, like anybody could have taken them. And I was ready to kiss her because to me that was such a load off my mind, like, oh, how am I going to make them different and as good as the ones my mother made or somebody else had made. So that was a tremendous relief. I had wonderful art directors. Marvin Israel was a huge, huge help to me. We did a wonderful story where we would ask famous people who they would want to be in another life, and then we would make a mask of that person, and I would photograph them with the mask on and their body. And then it was like a quiz, and you turn to the back of the magazine to find out who it really was, posing as, so Nancy Allen did it with these fantastic legs, and she wanted to be Greta Garbo or somebody. So it was George Burns did it. It was really fun.
And what about if you feel like telling the story about shooting Anthony Perkins?
interesting because my sister was a huge fan of his and used to like sit on his doorstep and got to be part of, I mean, was taken in by a friend of his and got to be part of their family, sort of. So many, many years later, a friend gave me a job to go photograph him. And that was early on in my experience working with actors. You know, they know how they look good, which is always great, a big help. Like, I don't look good lit from that side. Or I remember Frank Zappa said to me, no, the light's too even. Turn that one out. And I was like, he knows what he's talking about. It looks better when he's only lit on one side. And, you know, Blythe Danner told me, oh, you're coming from too low an angle. And, you know, they're always right. They know what they're talking
Nobody likes low angles.
about. No.
That's the other thing I think about theatre photographers, that I've always, these battles, when you do those kind of like press calls where you've got to like pretend to do a bit of the scene, and, you know, there's 50 people going, and they always, you know, the stage like this, and then it's like a, you know, it's not got an incline like this. That would be good actually if it did. But they have this theatre, so they're below. So all these shots you see in the theatre sections of all these newspapers are of looking up at these actors, and they're dreadful pictures. I said, why don't they go into the circle? What do you call it in America? The mezzanine, and take you so on the same level as you. Why? Why?
A longer lens, and that I mean, I think it would be beautiful because the set would be out of focus and it'd be a totally different picture.
Yeah, but also you wouldn't have big baggy chins.
I'm with you.
Yeah. Letters need to be written.
How are we doing, Claudia? Okay.
There's a lady.
This is for you, Alan. With all of your diverse and amazing work, film, stage, which do you prefer? Why? Do you have a preference at all? And what is your favorite film experience?
I don't. I mean, the fact that I go back and forward. I don't. Like right now, I'm really could care less about doing a play for a very long time, and so I really, you know, I'm kind of, you know, don't worry. I mean, I think you go through phases when you sort of sicken yourself of something, and then again, like I said earlier, it's quite good because now I'm quite excited about I'm going to do a film or something, and you know, after a while, I'll be really excited to go back to the theatre. I think I really, you know, if I was had a gun to my head, I always love this because the notion that someone would have a gun to, so is it film or theatre? If I did, I would choose theatre because I just really like the immediacy of the connection with the audience. Like I think it's very, I like it. It's exciting, and you know, and it's that thing of being in the moment. So but that's if I had a gun to my head, and what was my favourite film experience? Well, gosh, I don't know. I think that sometimes you have really good times on a film, and the film turns out really awfully, and then you have a miserable time on a film, and the film turns out really well. And I would much prefer to have a great time and have a bad film. Although we're talking today about a bad time and a bad film. Shh, don't say that was. But
I'd rather suffer and have the picture be good.
Yeah. But I don't know. I think, you know, my friend Jennifer and I made a film called The Anniversary Party, and it was just a really great experience because it was, you know, everything about it, from writing it, from the idea of writing it, and getting all these people to be in it, and having and all working the way we wanted, and then just, you know, everyone sort of quite liking it and everything, and I think that was a sort of one of those experiences where I think it couldn't have been better. The studio were very helpful, and everyone we got great people to do it. It got accepted to Cannes, and it was just a really from the whole way through, we got to make the film that we wanted, and I think that's my favourite experience in terms of just something that was just, I wish my life would be like that, you know, as sort of smooth and happy. It's the last question, you all. Are you up for it? No pressure, but it's got to be good.
This one was for Amy. As a teacher, are you seeing, aside from digital, are you seeing any distinct characteristics in the photographers coming up, concerns, approaches, styles, whatever?
Well, my most recent experience, one of my students was photographing people dressed as, like the same guy dressed as a man in a photograph with himself as a woman. So he's, doing montages, and then I thought, oh, that's a cool idea. And then he did plays on that, where he would have twin brothers, and he would add one of the brothers as an alter ego, sort of. So it would be 3 people in a photograph. And then I opened the New York Times Magazine 2 Sundays ago, and there's, I forget who it was. It was a fashion story, and there's the woman cloned 3 times. So I think that's a direction that we might or might not want to go in.
Less models.
Less talent.
Yeah, you. We were just talking, in addition to validation and things, that's another thing that I love about words that you use in America when you go, talent over there. Like, there'll be a table with nice things to eat on it, and someone will go, that's for the talent. Thanks. I suppose it's supposed to be nice, but it makes you think of like cows, like prize cows or something that you're trying to, or like ducks for foie gras.
Dogs that pose.
Yeah. So that's about it, isn't it? This is Amy Arbus, ladies and gentlemen.
And the fabulous Alan Cumming.